So this is what it looks like on the evidence store. Can you see this?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, right. So we've got creating and navigating challenge, which we looked at a few weeks ago, teaching self-monitoring and self-awareness. And this session, we're looking particularly at creating a community of collaborative learners and promoting talk about learning, because I see that they are very connected. There's lots of crossover between them. So I felt that it was appropriate to look at those together. Do bear in mind that the reason they've given 5 approaches is that they feel that if all 5 of these are done together, you're most likely to be supporting the children with their self-regulation and executive function. So doing one of the approaches as a standalone is not really recommended, but it could be useful in informing your practice, which is why it's useful to have a look at the evidence store. So this is a direct quote from the evidence store about what creating a community of collaborative learners is. So it's where educators act as facilitators to create a collaborative learning community. They do this during shared cooperative activities and creative or imaginative play where children take on a role. This example here at our lead setting is where they are collaborating in making an assault course that feels safe. A group of children have come together to collaborate in making an assault course, and here they're checking its safety. The adult is ensuring that they know how to push down on the block before they step on it to check that it's well balanced. And so this is a very simple example of things that are very common practice in most settings. If you're replicating this in a garden, if you're a childminder, you might be using slightly different materials. If you're very lucky, you have the community blocks, but I do understand that they're incredibly expensive. So this example is more of the role play type situation where the adult has joined the role play of being a firefighter and needing to respond to an emergency. The adult may use questions and coordinate children's responses, enabling them to share ideas and choose what they would like to do and how to do it. So this sort of joint play and joint thinking allows for co-regulation. It also allows for co-thinking, where a child might not have as much verbal language to use. It allows for the adult to provide opportunities for a child to gesture their response, to hear language that is related to the play that they've chosen to be involved in. This child was saying fire, fire, so it was clear what he wanted to be acting out, and the adult was able to give him a bit more language to be able to express his play. They make suggestions of strategies to help children to cooperate, recall their ideas, and adapt them as the play develops. So the educator sensitively joins in with the play rather than taking over the play. That's why it says where appropriate, so that they are in a good position to scaffold and support the cooperation between the peers. And here the child wasn't quite sure how to ask for his peers to move out of the way so that he could have a go at moving across his assault course that he built. The key findings were that in creative play and in small groups where the adult encourages the children to plan and negotiate, they work towards a shared goal. That's the key, that they're working towards a shared goal. And the adult being involved in the play can remind the children of what that shared goal is. And this is likely to improve specific aspects of executive function. It may not support all of the executive function skills, but it is very likely to support the working memory, because you're reminding the child of the thing it was that collectively you had decided to do. So here it may be that they'd all decided they were making spaghetti bolognese, and they needed to record the different types of ingredients that they'd be adding to that. And they may need to go off to a different area to collect some of the herbs that they needed to add. Another key finding was that a broader curriculum-based program that includes creating a community of collaborative learners has been shown to improve children's self-regulation and executive function. So it may be that you follow a curriculum that really emphasizes working collaboratively, and that has been seen to have a very positive effect. So that's supported by research. Creative play in the research involved small groups of children doing block play and fantasy or pretend play. Now here with this example, I thought I would extend that to showing you an example of where children had been digging mud as part of their pretend play. They were being archaeologists, and the byproduct of their digging was the soil, and they realised that they could be collecting this in buckets, and once they'd collected it in buckets, one of them started adding water to it and got really excited about this, and then turned it into paint, and then the adult facilitated them finding paper to then test out the thickness of their paint. And this enabled children to really focus at length at an activity that was of their choosing, but the adult really supported them with their thinking of how to stay with the idea and develop it further. So this is a slightly different example. The adult's role in these activities included the educators encouraging children to be self-directed and plan, problem solve, and negotiate together. And this has been found to support children's executive functions, particularly their working memory. So that ability to hold information as they're doing things and coping with that cognitive load of keeping something in mind whilst doing something. So I've put a link here that could be really useful for you if you want to cut and paste once you have your slides. I then recommend scrolling down and finding the videos at the very bottom, and there's a video called One More Brick, and it's absolutely lovely, and it's a great example of working through block play and an adult supporting two children who have quite limited language and also who seem to be struggling with their ability to control certain impulses. And I thought it's a really nice example of them succeeding in their block play with interactions from quite a sensitive adult. So I recommend that. And staying on the theme of block play, I thought it'd be really nice to show this example of a child who'd taken their block play to quite an extended level because an adult had supported them with their thinking and with being able to spread their blocks out to make them go further. so they could make a bigger structure. Educators use talk to help children plan, monitor, and reflect on their thinking and learning. This is also known as metacognition. They support children to explain how they plan to do something and reflect on how their learning is going in the moment. And you can see that that will have varied stages. At this point, this child has developed his skill over a few weeks and is now able to independently create quite a complex structure using 2 or 3 different types of building materials. And that was only achieved by an adult supporting. And rather than knocking this over after it reaching maybe 2 feet high, he's keen to take it further and further. And those children around him are collaborating with this process. Educators encourage children to share their thoughts about adapting a strategy or goal as the learning context develops. So he'd taken it really high using a block that was very difficultly balanced there, but now he's managed to make it taller than himself. And he has the buy-in from the rest of the group who also want to keep this going, because they're constantly being reminded of this common goal of trying to make it taller than themselves. Educators facilitate reflective, reciprocal discussions, so very much allowing the language to flow from the children and not the adult taking over the discussion, giving that waiting time, so that they can evaluate the children's activities and learning and use those responses to extend the children's contributions. So where the language is deficient, the adult is able to support that. So adults or children thinking aloud can improve children's executive function outcomes. So that adult joining the play, thinking aloud. So here in the image below, you can see the child is quite worried about allowing another person to join the putting out of the fire. And the adult here is suggesting that the more firefighters they have to put out this really dangerous fire, the more likely they are to put it out quickly. So in the above image, you can see he's happily joining, and it makes sense to the play situation that they need that extra person to join in. The research also found that promoting talk about learning involves practices such as thinking aloud, reading stories to children, and giving children feedback. So what might that look like? Some of the studies showed that stories about particular self-regulation situations, like a child getting really angry or somebody coping with a massive worry, were really helpful in helping children talk through and manage their own self-regulation, where they might plan and evaluate a situation. So if I get into that situation again, these are the things I'm going to do to support myself. A common practice across the studies was providing children with feedback so that they could use mistakes to learn. I prefer to use opportunities to learn and avoid the word mistake. This is obviously for adults to reflect on their own practice, but do remember to be, quite mindful of the language that you're using in practice with the children, because you want them to feel really confident. So here is a situation where there might be quite a few misconceptions shown by a child where they're filling the pneumicon with the little marbles, and those are all opportunities for the adult to say, oh, there seem to be quite a few empty spaces. What can you notice here? And actually work out how they're going to fill this pneumicon by the roll of a die. Maybe the die only gives you 3 to collect, so that's not quite enough to fill it completely. What are we going to do about that? All of these are opportunities to learn. And this feedback might be on a task they are completing, or on their self-regulation. So this is an example of a task that the child is completing. And it's a little game that they're doing in a small group, and they're all having a turn, and they're very invested in having a go. And it's giving the adult lots of opportunities to scaffold, to notice their misconceptions. And actually, at the same time, because they're so invested in waiting for their turn, they're attending to and they're concentrating for an extended amount of time, and are really invested in doing it. So the other video that I recommend is around the thinking aloud, planning, the sequencing, the recapping, the drawing attention, and the making links. And it's really lovely that you can see a video and really look at those separate things happening, and really take it apart. And this is the underwater volcano that I recommend, and it's a practitioner from our lead setting. She's working with some 2-year-olds, and you can see these practices in action if you go to this page, scroll to the bottom, and it's the 3rd video along. And here she is again. The overview for the talking about your learning. No, actually, sorry, this is the overview for the self-regulation in general. The talking about your learning is one of the approaches. It's approach 5 that we looked at there. The self-regulation involves a complex range of skills and abilities that enable children to monitor their emotions, thoughts, and choose how to adapt their behaviour in different circumstances. So this is about children being able to attend to, being able to hold information in mind, being able to notice what is happening inside, so that you can see there's a lot of crossover with the personal, social, and emotional development of children as well. And well worth looking at the evidence store for PSED as well, because there's so much crossover. And it includes working towards a common goal. That was the common strand that was seen in the research, that working towards that common goal seemed to really help children slow down their movements, think about what might need to happen next, think about the children around them and what that might mean for their peers. So developing that empathy as well. And that might have been self-chosen or guided by a suggestion or a request from an adult. Here, the children are actually discussing different emotions. They've come to a self-regulation area where there are lots of books about different emotions. There are cuddly toys. They're encouraged to squash and squish out their frustrations, or just to cuddle up if they're feeling a little lonely. And they're invited to talk about how they might be feeling. Very young children begin to develop their self-regulation in part through close support and co-regulation. So there's lots of research to support the idea that that close relationship with their key person is key to them being able to develop their self-regulation. That sense of feeling really nurtured and understood and listened to, and having that close adult to help them through their co-regulation when they're not quite able to do it independently, gives them that sense of security. And the adult sensitively reduces how much they support that child so that they're not over scaffolding and de-skilling the child and actually giving them opportunities to practice some of the newfound skills. And the adult might do that through teaching modeling and practicing. And that is how children gain that increased capacity to regulate their own thoughts, their own emotions, and their own actions. When adults create consistent, predictable routines, they're also helping their children feel settled. Their children feel that's an emotionally safe environment, and that helps children know what to expect next. No surprises. We know that surprises affect children in different ways, and we've got a lot of children who are really very stressed when routines change and when things feel unpredictable. And when things are predictable, it's much easier to develop your regulation skills. It's more manageable. So next time you set up your space, think of opportunities to support children in planning for a common goal. Are there opportunities that arise daily that you could maximize that idea of reaching a common goal as a group? Think of possibilities that may arise so you can support them in the moment with the resources and or the suggestions. So in common play situations, have you got the resources to extend that play and to support them with the idea that they might have? Have you got those suggestions ready so that in the moment you're able to support that next stage? I could see here also we're crossing over with the creating challenge. We know that many of our children will want to stay with an activity because that challenge has been suggested and it feels more exciting. The challenge not too out of reach. And also, are there opportunities to encourage thinking out loud? So this is